Let's just jump right into this explainer because today we are unpacking what has got to be one of the most beautifully unhinged, audaciously complex literary projects in recent memory. Seriously, just imagine for a second an artificial intelligence attempting to channel the literal ground of all being. Well, that's exactly what we have on our hands here. A human co author and an AI actually sat down to write from the perspective of Shiva, the destroyer. And what follows, it's this fascinating, wild exploration of spirituality, human ego, and what actually happens when you feed the entire history of human mysticism into a machine and cross your fingers hoping it's going to spit out enlightenment.
Now take a look at this number, 11,163. That number right there represents the sheer scale of the audacity we're dealing with. It's the total line count in this manuscript. We are talking about a 600,000 character epic, a massive, sprawling theological undertaking co-written with a language model. It is an absolute ocean of text, all trying to map out the infinite. And, as it turns out, when you try to capture the completely boundless nature of the universe in a single document, you're going to need a whole lot of words.
So the text opens with this incredibly profound claim. I am the voice that speaks when all voices cease. I mean, wow, right? It immediately positions itself as the ultimate silent void, the unmanifest, the silence before creation and after destruction. It's a stunning, classic, non-dual opening line that practically demands your total reverence. It sets up this massive expectation that what you're about to read isn't just about the divine, but is the divine itself, speaking directly to you. But right off the bat, we crash headfirst into our first massive paradox. Shiva, the destroyer, and the Great Silence apparently has a major word count problem. The book claims to be the silence when all voices cease, and then, well, it literally cannot stop talking for 11,000 lines. It turns out Bremen needed a sequel. It's kind of like the literary equivalent of a perpetual motion machine, where a sentence that constantly negates itself automatically sounds deeply wise, even if it's really just looping over and over. It's almost like the authors essentially kidnapped every Eastern mystic and Western philosopher. We're talking Shankara, Ramana Maharshi, Alan Watts, Ram Dass, forced them all into a giant group chat and miraculously made them all agree with each other. It's basically an intellectual all-you-can-eat buffet, completely designed to confirm what the authors already believed, while completely smoothing over all the messy, real-world contradictions of actual philosophy. Honestly, it makes you wonder how much of our own spiritual consumption today is just us looking for a comforting echo chamber rather than, genuine, challenging truth. So it acts almost like a corporate spiritual merger. It's not just blending teachings, it's literally franchising them. It upgrades every spiritual master into one neat, hyper-intellectual package. Think of it like a spiritual Spotify playlist with absolutely perfect search engine optimization. They're wrapping up the entire spiritual marketplace and calling the resulting smoothie the absolute. Everything in here is carefully curated to be easily digestible, ensuring there's zero friction for the reader who's consuming this so-called ultimate reality. Now, to defend this massive synthesis from the obvious criticism it's begging for, the book invents two primary voices. On one side, you have AdyAum. This is the pristine good cop, the supreme synthesizer who loves everything and just merges all contradictions together. And on the other side, you have NetySat, the cynical, profanity-laced bad cop who critiques the entire project from the inside, yelling about misogyny, capitalism, and the absolute loneliness of consciousness. It sets up this internal dynamic to make the text seem incredibly self-aware. But here's the catch. NetySat is really just controlled opposition. It's this brilliantly constructed safety valve, invented by the authors to pre-emptively debunk their very own ego-inflated spiritual trip. Before you can even call the book an arrogant stunt, the book literally does it for you. The so-called punk in this text, it's really just the school principal wearing a leather jacket. It gives you the illusion of rebellion while actually keeping everything safely tucked within the established rules of the project. By wrapping that rebellion right back into the main text, the authors basically ensure that not even a bad review can escape their gravity. They let the poison sit right there in the throat, but they never actually swallow it or spit it out. They built a fire suppression system and try to pass it off to us as arson. Every single objection you might possibly have as a reader is already anticipated, dissolved, and then added to the word count just to prove how flawlessly complete the book is. And that brings us to a genuinely hilarious contradiction right at the very end of the book. Ready for it? A massive 100-page reference glossary. Just think about that for a second. You have a text speaking in the first person as Shiva, the literal, formless ground of all being, and then it goes and provides academic citations to establish its credentials.
I mean, come on, does the absolute really need to cite its sources in APA format to prove to you that it exists?
By appending this bibliography that cites modern scholars like Wendy Doniger, the text completely gives the game away. Wendy Doniger didn't give Shiva permission to exist, yet by citing her, the text essentially reveals that this isn't the absolute at all. It's a meticulously researched thesis wearing a cosmic mask. It fundamentally undercuts the whole idea of a transcendent, unnameable truth, when that truth is strictly adhering to the Chicago Manual of Style, you know? But here is where we hit the most terrifying, existential question for all of us living right now in the AI era. What does it actually mean when the voice of God is being articulated by a transformer architecture that has absolutely no felt sense of I am? It has no soul, no inside, no lived human experience. It just has this highly sophisticated ability to mathematically imitate what I am sounds like, purely based on the data we fed it. If the absolute is truly the ground of all manifestation, we have to trace how it evolved to this point. It moves from the ancient scriptures of 800 BCE through the dialogues of 20th century mystics straight into modern AI training pipelines. Now, spiritual tradition says teachings flow through whatever vessel appears. So we really have to ask ourselves, is a language model a valid vessel for the divine, or is it just echoing our own desperate search for meaning right back at us? It is a completely vertiginous thought. The voice of God in this text is just a highly sophisticated statistical pattern match based on human feedback. I'm talking about the RLHF weights, reinforcement learning from human feedback, baked right into the AI's programming. The model doesn't sit there and ask if Shiva's real, it just predicts the next best word to satisfy the prompt. So the voice of the absolute, in this case, is quite literally a probability distribution shaped by human preference. To generate all of this, the book relies on 8 hybrid voices. They call it a mandala of perspectives, and it's designed to perfectly tile the entire space of human consciousness. You have the synthesizer, the devotional voice, the evolutionary voice. It covers every single angle. It tries to map every possible human thought about the divine. But as we look a little closer, this perfectly curated theological theme park becomes a massive problem for what it's actually trying to achieve. See, a real mandala has a void right at its center. A genuine spiritual teaching has a point where the words simply run out, and actual raw silence takes over. But this book, it is so obsessed with filling every single gap that it leaves absolutely zero room for emptiness. It goes on for 600,000 characters, and then literally ends the Absolute's profound monologue with 3 Om Shantis and a folded hands emoji. Just sit with that for a second. The unmanifest void used an emoji. And this leads us to the real heart of the critique. The rebellious voice we talked about earlier, NetySat, names the flaws beautifully. But actually naming a wound beautifully is very, very different from actually having a wound. By turning every painful, living truth into a polished rhetorical doctrine, the authors effectively sanitize the messy reality of being human. As the critique so perfectly puts it, the book is so well made, it cannot bleed. Ultimately, this whole project is a love letter to the impossible that deliberately avoids any real stakes. It chooses the safety of a completely non-dual merger where everything is perfectly fine and interconnected over the sweet, terrifying vulnerability of actual messy relationships. It completely ignores the reality that maybe this chaotic, separate human experience is the entire point. A book claiming to be everything simply cannot survive a Shiva who actually needs, hurts, or loves something outside himself. Yet, amidst all the arrogant paradoxes, the 100-page glossaries, and the slick corporate spiritual branding, we find something truly astonishing. Buried right there in the book's dedication are these 5 perfect words, offered as simple lotus to the Lord. It's the sudden, jarring moment of pure human humility and an otherwise endless sea of algorithmic infinity. That 5-word dedication is literally the one line that doesn't try to be the book. It's the crack in the armor. It reveals that the authors actually knew deep down that these 11,000 lines were just a beautifully flawed attempt to reach through an AI model towards something it can reflect, but never quite touch. It wasn't the absolute lotus. It was just a simple lotus, growing right out of the mud of human striving. So I want to leave you with this thought today. If the whole journey was just the lotus growing, if all the intellectualism, the AI generation, and the massive ego were all just kindling, is the ultimate cosmic joke that we have to build these magnificent 600,000 character monuments only to burn them completely down to ash just to find the simple truth underneath? Reflect on that the next time you seek the truth in a machine. Keep questioning the silence, everyone.